I've got that middle strap put on there permanently now. I took this tape, this fiberglass tape, and put on the body of the strap where it contacts the fuel tank, and then I took peralkatone and filled in all of the holes, the bolts and stuff like that. I put them in the raw bolt holes and then put them on the bolts and nuts and stuff and everything when I assembled everything. This is the peralkatone here. It's a heavy bodied, thick grease. It has a lot of paraffin in it. It's soft when it gets hot. It'll get runny when it gets hot, and when it gets cold it's really hard. You can apply it directly like this out of the can, or take a gob of it and put in a tray or something and mix it up with some solvent. You can use gasoline, diesel oil, kerosene. I prefer paint thinner. That's what I generally use. That'll go on water thin. That way you can spray it on or brush it on. Use a paint spray gun or a part spray gun, something like that, to spray it on with that. As it sits, the paint thinner or whatever solvents in there you got will evaporate off and it'll leave a thin coat. This will leave a thicker coat. It leaves kind of a rough coat. This stuff does. This will run into any cracks or crevices or anything like that, but it also has a tendency to run all over everything else until the solvent evaporates. If you had a gasoline or some light volatile solvent, it would evaporate faster. Paint thinner takes a little while longer, so it runs farther. This stuff goes on thicker, but it melts under heat. So once I put this on, I'll take the heat gun and then go over the parts, heat them up. And if you just heat the peralkatone, it will get runny and kind of just run into everything. If you heat the parts that it's on, it'll heat the peralkatone up, of course, but then it runs into any cracks, crevices, notches, spots, things like that that you get it on. And once it dries, it's pretty much insoluble in water. Does about the best protection of anything for rust and corrosion and stuff, of anything I've found. It does make a mess. It looks dirty. The older it gets black and stuff. When it's fresh, while it's still soft, it'll pick up dirt. But once it flashes off after a few days and the solvents evaporate out of it, it gets hard to the touch, and then dirt and stuff won't impregnate in it anymore. Anyway, I've got the middle strap all taken care of with anti-chafe tape and the peralkatone over everything. I've got the front strap off. I took the duct tape that I had on there off of it and I washed it down with acetone. Now I'll cut a piece of this fiberglass tape and stick on there. I marked off the limits of where I want it to go. Here on this is on the left side. It's just past where it contacts the tank, and then up here farther on this side is where it contacts the tank. Well, I'll put that stuff on there. Then I'll take some of this peralkatone and go through all the holes and everything and put all the screws and bolts back on and coat everything with peralkatone. So I get this grease, peralkatone, everywhere. It gets on the shank of the bolts and screws. It gets between the washers and the bolt and the head of the screw and whatever it's holding down and all of that. And that keeps any moisture out of it. It'll squeeze out and it'll coat everything that way. And then once I get it on and everything tightened up, then I'll take the rear strap off and do the same thing to it. Okay, belly tank is all fitted up. I got all three straps on there. Got them all tied down nice and tight. All the bolts and hardware are tightened up on them. Fits up in there pretty darn good. The straps worked out good, the new ones. I got peralkatone on all the bolts and hardware, even though they're stainless steel and they're going to look like crap. But that'll keep them from rusting. Even the stainless steel, then exposed in the salt water, gets corrosion on it, so that'll help with that. And those are tabs were tipped in a little bit so they're not protruding out into the main plane of the side of the airframe there. And there's the fuel tank connected up to the line going into the pump. I've just got it dry fitted for right now. I put it through there and cut out that hole and then looked at that line and thought, oh crap, I got to make up a new line. I cut that too short, but I forgot that there's an adapter that goes, that line coming out of the tank is an 8 and the line goes through the fuel system is a 6, so I had to have a reducer there, and that's why the line was a little bit short. So once I dug that reducer out and put it on there. Everything fits up just like it's supposed to. Oh, I have to take that off and put some sealant on the threads or some lubricant on the threads and tighten everything up with a wrench. I just got it dry fitted on there now, but wanted to make sure it fits, and it looks like it's going to fit just fine, just like it was made for it, just like somebody knew what they were doing. Went ahead and tightened up the fuel connector there. I put a little bit of thread sealant on it. Those are flare fittings anyway, so they don't technically need any kind of sealant on them. They should seal just against the flares, but I put a little bit of Teflon thread sealant on them anyway. Ordinarily on most all of the rest of them I used fuel lube, but I used some Teflon sealant on those because I had it here and didn't have any fuel lube here right now. And those are going to be down where they're inaccessible, so I wanted to make sure they had a good seal on them. Now that doesn't really, well, that'll help seal them up a little bit, but mainly it's on there to help keep them from getting seized together or anything. Keep the threads lubricated a little bit so they can come apart, so that they're sealed fairly tight, but they'll also come apart when you need to. They don't get corroded and gummed up and stuck together. Well, anyway, that should do it for the fuel tank. I shouldn't have to worry about that thing. Well, I've got to put the quick drain in. I'll come up with it as I go through things now to find all the parts to put them together, and I'll put that in when I get it. But other than that, I shouldn't have to do anything with that thing except fill it up with gas and run it dry once I get the airplane going. I got a new quick drain to put in that belly tank, that fuel tank. As the old one, it was pretty corroded. I cleaned it all up real good on the wire brush and stuff, but of course it couldn't get down on the inside of it there. I did take seal right here. Actually, this one has a gasket or a O-ring on it, I think. Anyway, there's a seal right here on it. On the other one, it was a piece of plastic dish, like a gasket or a washer in there. I'd taken that off so I could clean up around it and everything and get it all the corrosion from around it. And I just decided for the cost of them, you know, it's all the work I did on that belly tank and stuff, I might as well just get a new one. Probably cost more for the gasket on that thing than it did for the whole thing, although I probably could have used an O-ring on there like this one has. Curtis quick drain, approved for aviation fuels only. Quick drain aircraft valve. So now I might as well put that on that fuel tank and help keep getting any dirt or anything in that fuel tank. That's the last opening on the tank. So I've got a little bit of fuel lube. I use this on all my fuel lines and stuff, and a lot of the gaskets and stuff that I put on the engine to help seal it up. It's something that doesn't get hard, and it does help seal, and it keeps these O-rings and stuff lubricated. So I'm just going to put a little bit right around that O-ring. I don't want too much on it, just a little bit. This is a pipe thread, so it needs pipe sealant on it. And again, you can't use Teflon tape on those like you do plumbing or anything, so I've got this Teflon thread sealant. This works. It doesn't take very much on there. They say you can just put it in one spot and it smears around, but I like to smear it around, make sure I get it on all the threads. Now I can go thread this in the bushing on the fuel tank. Well, that quick drain wouldn't start in there, and it figures I got fiberglass resin in there in the threads, so I went and got my pipe tap and cleaned it out. I just turned it in there to the point where it just starts making brass shavings. You see what's coming out of there is fiberglass shavings. Well, that's better. Oh yeah, it goes in there now. Inch and a quarter for that. Now that's the reason I got that hex stock to make that bushing out of, is I can hold on to that now. And I don't have to worry about stressing that fiberglass. There we go. Now if I ever want to take that out, I can put the wrench on that hex, that bushing, and I'll be able to turn this out to clean it up. That's something I tried to do before, was sometimes you get crud in there in those seals, and it holds it open, and it'll leak a little bit. Of course, the steel seals can wear out, and this thing gets all corroded and everything. Now, before, when I tried to turn that thing out, it just started cracking the fiberglass around there, so I just had to quit. So now I'll be able to put this wrench on there and hold it, and I'll be able to turn this drain out of there when I need to clean it up. So in keeping with the theme of anti-corrosion on here, I've got some of this peralkatone. This stuff is pretty thin, mixed in with paint thinner, really thin. Paint everything with this. Now, of course, the brass doesn't rust, but it still corrodes. No point in taking a chance on it. I'll go ahead and get this stuff all coated up. I'll work with a brush or a rag saturated with paint thinner. It'll clean up the drips. Now my fuel tank is officially done. I still have to get the labels put on it, back on it. I've got to get the data plate put back on it, and I've got to get a label made for it to put on it, but those are things that don't have anything to do with the function. Like that belly tank weighs 35 pounds, and it's down there off center on the airplane, down there on the bottom, so it sure makes a difference on turning that airplane on that rotisserie. I was able to turn it pretty easy with the bare frame and stuff, but got a lot of counterweight on it now. Need another counterweight on the top to counterweight the counterweight.